basically hasn't changed in 123 years, since nearly 25,000 Union and Confederate soldiers clashed here, leaving almost 3,100 men killed and wounded. Today, this field is the site of an annual reenactment of the Battle of Cedar Mountain. Hello, I'm Ed Gentry in Culpeper, Virginia. About 2,000 Civil War hobbyists gather here to recreate the battle and camp out as men actually did during the Civil War. Though this is a weekend hobby, most of us are also serious students of the war. We want to learn by experiencing it, not only by recreating the battle, but by reliving the feelings and thoughts of our ancestors who took part in this nation's only Civil War. The living history which you're about to see is, to my way of thinking, one of the best ways for young people to better understand how our forefathers found the courage to fight as they did. Many who fought in the Civil War were teenagers, and today many young people participate in Civil War reenactments. The Battle of Cedar Mountain is but one of the many battles fought during the Civil War, but it typifies the hardships of camp life, the camaraderie, and most importantly, the emotional quality of America divided by war. Truly a war in the family. Many of those who come to Cedar Mountain every August relive the event as authentically as possible. What you're about to see, with the help of actual letters and comments of the reenactors, is how the battle might really have been for the men who fought it and for the families whose lives it touched. Looking back on it, the term brother against brother was true. Militarily, both the Confederate and Union forces appeared the same. Many of their top leaders trained together at West Point as one army. Now they were split in two. When both forces were encamped close by, they sometimes serenaded each other, and occasionally they even traded Confederate tobacco for Union coffee and newspapers. At the outset of the war, both sides consisted of mainly volunteers, and both sides weren't really trained to fight professionally. But make no mistake about it, both sides fought fiercely and bravely, and at the Battle of Cedar Mountain, many men died.
His arms are round as proud as fierce as a 40-pounder. Look away, look away, look away. I wish I was in Dixie, away, away. In Dixieland I'll take my stand, live and die in Dixie, away, away, away down south, Dixie. John Brown's body lies a-mouldering in the grave. John Brown's body lies a-mouldering in the grave. His soul goes marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah.
In August 1862, a young Union recruit wrote in a letter,
Dear Ennis, we arrived at Culpeper at midnight on the 8th, when the tired men, with only the blue canopy of heaven for their covering, were soon fast asleep.
The cold passed reluctantly from the earth, and the retiring fogs revealed an army stretched out on the hills, resting. Stephen Crane began the red badge of courage with those lines, and that pretty much describes the Union camp on the morning of the Battle of Cedar Mountain. Even though camp life wasn't at all glamorous, teenagers eagerly enlisted as drummer boys and buglers. Some even lied about their age so they could carry a weapon. But on the battlefield, all of these young men were at risk, and some died at Cedar Mountain.
Good morning to you now. I see you both slept well. Murphy, see? Dine in. Wetzel, Wilkinson. Graham.
Here, Sergeant.
Attention, battalion.
Stonewall Jackson's Confederate divisions were on their way from Orange to Culpeper, where, unbeknownst to them, Union forces under General Nathaniel Banks were stationed. At Jackson's last engagement with Banks at the Battle of Winchester, Jackson soundly defeated the Union troops. For Banks' Union forces, this impending battle probably afforded an opportunity for an important rematch. Even for hungry new recruits, the rations weren't too bad. Salt pork and biscuits.
We foraged the tomatoes and eggs from a nearby farm, so breakfast that morning was really good.
We passed a couple of shoulder straps there a couple of times, didn't we?
As the morning wore on, the men became restless for an engagement. Many men wrote to their loved ones, and before the battle, a young recruit wrote in a letter home,
My spirits are very good now. I feel very much encouraged now. I begin to think this war is not going to last long. I'm going to try to come home this fall if I can. If you see my family, give my love to them, and all a kiss, even to my dog, and tell them it is from me. Father, I must close, so goodbye and write soon.
Many homes in Culpeper would be used as hospitals, so local women often served as nurses to the wounded. Frequently, they gathered with their children to exchange war news and to comfort one another.
This was a gentler side of the war. The ladies came out, they shared information, and they supported one another. To be with other ladies seemed to help bear the burden of the war, and it made life easier for them. They talked about new fashions, and getting dressed up made them feel better. The children stayed with the ladies most of the time. The child's upbringing could be judged by the way he behaved at adult gatherings. They were on their best behavior.
It'll be good to get them home again. Start the family again. Yeah. What, you want to get a cookie to Matthew? To Matthew, cookie. That's good. Some tea?
It was not unusual for a Southern woman to be married and expecting a child by the time she was a teenager. The husbands were teenagers too, and many of them enlisted in the Army by that time.
ABC Notebook, A War in the Family. Brought to you by FisherPrice.
For the reenactors, as well as the actual Civil War soldiers, the most important preparation for the battle was drilling. Because mass firing was the way the war was fought, every step was choreographed. It was critical to get everybody moving in the same direction at the same time and to make sure everyone could turn from a marching column into a firing line very quickly. The lives of every infantryman depended on being able to react to a command instantly.
Yeah, don't bring any ramrod. Okay, we're going to do skirmish drill.
Both armies were filled with young, untrained recruits. It's regional folklore that a lot of units had many country boys who knew the difference between hay and straw, but they didn't know their left from their right. So they'd tie bundles of hay to their left foot and bundles of straw to their right, and that's how they'd learn to march and to drill, by responding to the commands, hay foot, straw foot, hay foot, straw foot.
2 ranks. Put him at rest, Corporal.
3rd Virginia. Order. Arm. Rest.
As monotonous as it seemed, at the beginning, recruits spent almost all their time in camp drilling and learning the manual of arms. They had to be able to obey commands without even thinking. This would become most critical in battle, when quick reactions to commands could really mean the difference between life and death.
How many times did I tell you to do that? But you get a little bit of moisture reflected on a blade like this, and it's going to leave red rust all over the place. Every night, check this and find out if there's any moisture whatsoever on this blade. Because you see, every spot of moisture is going to cause a little red rust to form. It's coming, but we have a long way to go. Long way to go. That'll hold it for now, though.
About the youngest drummer boy, or pony, at the Cedar Mountain reenactment was around 12 years old.
The first thing is that as a drummer boy, I feel pretty important because we really have nice looking uniforms and we're right in front and right next to the colors. And so we feel like we're the majesty of the Army. Then the fear comes in. We get into battle and we start hearing guns. We start wondering, is it going to be me today?
The men rechecked their gear. They made sure they had 60 rounds of ammunition, which was customary in the Union Army. As far as the supplies went, the Union Army had all the advantages. They had more and better arms and equipment from northern factories and mills. Also, the Union Navy blockaded the southern ports and kept Confederate supplies from coming in. That, in short, was why the Union Army was better equipped.
Outward, face. Post, mark.
In spite of endless hours of practice and drilling, some of the southern country roads and fields made marching difficult.
It's rough terrain to march through. It's messy and it's extremely hard just to march. When it gets muddy, the cows run through the pasture and make holes. And then you get stuck in them, constantly falling and tripping.
The cavalry was the advance team, the intelligence unit of the Army. The infantry were the common foot soldiers who had to go through terrific hardships. They really bore the brunt of most of the battles. The drummer boys provided the marching cadence until they arrived on the battlefield, where they tended the wounded or aided the officers. On the way into battle, the soldiers broke ranks to ditch playing cards along the roadside. They didn't want loved ones to discover their past vices if they met their death that day. The battle in the wheat field, fought mostly by the infantrymen, was truly the turning point of the Battle of Cedar Mountain. Earlier in the day, fierce artillery fire was exchanged for nearly 2 hours, but the real climax of the battle was about to take place here. The Confederate troops were arriving from the direction of Orange. They were late because their orders had been misinterpreted. What we're about to see are the participants in the reenactment of the Battle of Cedar Mountain going into the battle in the wheat field in their attempt to bridge the gap between 1862 and 1985. It was sweltering in the wheat field that day, and neither side was sure of the other's strength, though both sides were confident. Neither side would really be able to claim a victory that evening, though both sides did.
Hey, right there. Hold your line. Hold your line right until here.
Under General Banks, the Union forces attacked aggressively, expecting reinforcements that never came. The attack dealt the Confederate forces a substantial blow. What Banks didn't know was that Jackson's forces outnumbered his more than 2-1. Moreover, this was to be the first battle of Jackson's Civil War career in which he himself raised his sword. Jackson's army was in trouble, and to rouse them, he cried, "Rally, brave men, and press forward. Your general will lead you. Jackson will lead you. Follow me." Inspired, the Confederates mounted a ferocious counterattack led by Culpeper's own General A.P. Hill, and the Union soldiers were forced to retreat.
The battle fought here was sort of a draw, but the Confederates say they won. The reason they say that is because the Federal troops withdrew toward Culpeper to get reinforcements. And when they fell back, the Confederates took the battle as a win. But I think it was a draw. Both sides lost a lot of men.
The Battle of Cedar Mountain ended at 7 o'clock that evening. The Union reinforcements never arrived, so since the Confederate forces held the field, They claimed victory. But the victory was bittersweet. Jackson had not succeeded in capturing Culpeper, and his losses were substantial. On August 10th and 11th, 1862, there was no fighting. Both sides removed their wounded and buried their dead. Thousands of men had stood up and marched straight at each other, knowing that in a couple of minutes, many of them would be killed or wounded. Personally, I could not understand where they got the courage to do that, and that's why I'm a reenactor. By experiencing all the sights, the sounds, the feelings, you come as close here as you ever can to really understanding what they went through and how they survived it. Our ancestors were extraordinary people. The sacrifices they made shaped our nation into what it is today. Each year in Culpeper, we remember the men on both sides who fought here, and we come away from the experience with a better sense of who we are and where we're going.
Now there's a whole new way for your child to be creative with the FisherPrice Camera, designed just for kids. Inside's a Kodak camera. Outside, it's pure FisherPrice. Big buttons, cushioned ends.
Come on, Prince, smile.
There's even a built-in level indicator.
Hold it!
Introduce your child to the art of picture taking. And watch what happens. The FisherPrice Camera, a whole new way to be creative.
Oh, what I wouldn't do to get more chocolatey pebbles from you, no. I'm a chocolate space cadet. Life support system down to 0 cocoa. Feeling spacey.
Have some of my new cocoa pebbles. Now so chocolatey.
Smells cocoa-licious. Space cocoa-lectable.
Barney!
Oh, time for the Pebble spacewalk.
Pulse new, more chocolatey Cocoa Pebble cereal. Part of this nutritious breakfast. Yabba dabba delicious.
Tomorrow. For an updated look at what's going on, join Frank Luber, Debbie Wright, Don O'Brien, and Paul Sherry for the weekend edition of Eyewitness News. Tonight at 7, right here on Channel 13.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to help us produce more compelling historical content like this, please like, comment below, and share this video with fellow history buffs. And of course, be sure to subscribe to help keep history happening.